Hello, I'm Oda. We are researchers at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels, a member of the Green Deal network.
In this video, we will give you an overview of more recent EU climate policies centered about the European Green Deal.
The European Green Deal has been described as Europe's man-on-the-moon moment, as it sets out to transform the EU through a series of comprehensive actions in order to reach climate neutrality by 2050. The European Commission first introduced the European Green Deal in December 2019, a move that surprised many in Brussels due to its rapid succession to the 2030 framework. It can be seen as a response both to the EU's general responsibilities embedded in the Paris Agreement, but also to public demand for change, which was evident in movements like Fridays for Future. Although member states showed a varying degrees of enthusiasm, the European Green Deal was quickly endorsed by the European Council and then approved by the European Parliament. When Commission President Ursula von der Leyen introduced the Green Deal, she stated that its goal is to reconcile the economy with our planet, to reconcile the way we produce and the way we consume with our planet, and to make it work for our people. As such, the European Green Deal aims at transforming the European society and economy by addressing climate change, fostering sustainable economic growth, and improving the well-being of EU citizens. This transition implies the greening of sectors like agriculture and energy, and enabling a more environmentally aware consumption and a more sustainable habits in general. The European Green Deal contains an extensive array of legislative measures to reach these objectives. First, at the center of the European Green Deal stands the European Climate Law, which was adopted in 2021. It enshrined the EU's target to reach climate neutrality by 2050 into European law. It also included an interim target for the EU to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. Additionally, the procedure to negotiate and adopt the 2040 climate target, and it established a European Scientific Advisory Board on climate change. This advisory board provides the EU with scientific knowledge and advice related to climate change. It gives recommendations to the EU institutions and the member states on existing and proposed climate policies. One of its first outputs was on the EU's 2040 emission reduction target, in which it argued to set an objective of 90 to 95% emission reductions. Second, to reach these emission reduction objectives, the Commission proposed the Fit for 55 package, of which most of the elements have already been adopted. Third, beyond climate measures, the European Green Deal contains a variety of strategies and legislative proposals covering a wide range of topics such as agriculture and the circular economy. In what follows, we will discuss these in detail. The Fit for 55 package is a set of legislative pieces that aims to ensure the 55% reduction by 2030 target is reached. It revises prior EU policies and introduces some new initiatives as well.
The package includes emission reductions across all economic sectors by updating important pieces of legislation, such as the Emissions Trading Systems Directive, which covers the emissions of sectors such as the power industry, and the effort-sharing regulation, covering sectors like transport and buildings. Additionally, by mandating a zero-emission standard by 2035 for new cars, the EU effectively will start phasing out polluting fossil fuel cars. It is also the first zero-emissions target for a specific economic sector. However, these revisions and new initiatives, such as the emissions trading system for transport and building, risk worsening existing socioeconomic inequalities. To mitigate some of these social impacts and to assure the transition is a just transition, the EU has adopted the Social Climate Fund that is geared to support the most vulnerable citizens and small businesses with the green transition. The Fit for 55 package also has an external dimension. To avoid the shift of emissions from inside to outside of the EU through the relocation of industries or the import of more carbon-intensive goods, the EU has adopted the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. EU importers will be required to buy carbon certificates in line with EU carbon prices, unless they can show they already paid for the carbon produced. In doing so, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism not only attempts to avoid so-called carbon leakage, but it also tries to green production processes in third countries.
Almost all of the elements of the Fit for 55 package has now been adopted. surprisingly as the legislative process took place during not one but two major crises. However, these seem to have enabled ambitious climate action rather than obstructed it. First, in its response to the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, the EU created the Next Generation EU instrument to help European economy recover. Committed to its climate goals, the EU benchmarked 37% of the fund to climate change initiatives to accelerate the implementation of the Green Deal. Second, Russia invading Ukraine in 2022 catapulted the EU into an energy crisis. To shield EU citizens and businesses from the energy market disruptions caused by the Russian invasion, the EU quickly created the REPowerEU plan. It does not only contain measures geared at diversifying the EU's energy supply, but also at saving energy and at accelerating the shift to renewable energy, for which the EU is not dependent on Russia. Therefore, in its response to the energy crisis, the EU yet again affirmed its commitment to climate action.
As we explained earlier, the ambition of the European Green Deal goes beyond reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reaching climate neutrality by 2050. It also entails building a more fair and prosperous EU society and ensuring a just transition for everyone, transforming our economies and decoupling economic growth from resource use, as well as protecting our nature and biodiversity. Achieving these objectives is possible, but it will be a complex task that requires change across all levels of society and governance. It entails rethinking policies for clean energy supply, industry, infrastructure and construction, transport, food systems and agriculture. The list goes on. To start this process, the European Commission has formulated a series of sectoral strategies. These strategies further detail the respective objectives of the European Green Deal. They highlight particular challenges and they set out a roadmap and priority actions for revising existing or proposing new legislation. While the strategies have taken the form of Commission communications and are therefore not policies in itself, in most cases they have been debated and endorsed by the Council and the European Parliament, respectively. To illustrate the broad scope of the European Green Deal and the role of sectoral strategies, we in the following briefly introduce two sectoral strategies in more detail: the Circular Economy Action Plan and the EU Biodiversity Strategy. Today, much of our economy and production is based on the extraction of natural resources for raw materials. However, these are not infinite and their extraction often has negative impacts on both the ecological and human landscapes that surround it. Moving away from this unsustainable way of doing things to a circular economy that requires as little as new natural resources as possible is therefore an integral part of the European Green Deal. It is a unique opportunity to increase EU industrial competitiveness and create new jobs and green growth. The 2020 New Circular Economy Action Plan contains objectives and measures on how to do that, building on the first Circular Economy Action Plan from 2015. It outlines several initiatives along the entire life cycle of products, including how products are designed and how they can be reused and recycled as long as possible. Additionally, it also includes measures to encourage sustainable consumption. Against this background, the Commission has proposed new rules on the general eco-design of new products, increasing information to customers, and the right to repair goods. Additionally, specific rules covering batteries, textiles, construction, biodegradable plastics, reducing microplastics, and waste have been proposed or already adopted. Ecosystems provide essential services for food production, fresh water and clean air that are difficult, if not impossible, to replace, beyond of course the importance of biodiversity in its own right. To better protect ecosystems, to reverse their widespread degradation and to foster their recovery, the Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 includes both short-term measures and a long-term plan. These include the extension of protected nature areas across Europe, reducing the use of harmful pesticides, and a closer progress of monitoring. A core element of the strategy is the introduction of the nature restoration law that for the first time in the EU's history would contain binding restoration targets for specific habitats and species. However, it has so far been heavily contested due to the implications the law might have for agricultural protection, with some members even calling for a pause in European climate action.
As the discussion on the nature restoration law showed, the EU's green transition is not without conflicts. We will discuss the challenges the EU faces in the modules that follow, including the implications of the strong focus on economic growth in Module 4 and the tension between democracy and climate action in Module 6. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy the rest of the course.